Hey, what's up everybody? This is Mr. 008 here, and today I have for you my video covering the balance changes for update 43 of Bloons Tower Defense 6. So let's collect our daily reward right there, a first tier Monkey Buccaneer. Not too bad, I suppose. And let's go ahead, let's do this one in the loop, since we haven't used this map in a while. So I'm thinking I'm going to turn off monkey knowledge first, just so that things are a little bit easier to follow, especially for players who may not have certain types of monkey knowledge unlocked yet. So here we are again, and let's begin with the dart monkey, which has a couple of changes for us to go through. So first of all, the Juggernaut's knockback is getting a buff. So the knockback duration will be 0.15 seconds instead of 0.1 seconds. So let's go ahead and send out 10 green balloons right there. So let's see if we can see it better there. We kind of can. Not sure why some of them are. Let's see. Okay, never mind. So it's kind of hard to see like how the change works, but let's go ahead for the 402, which has increased knockback to heavy targets 2.25 units instead of 1.5, and the knockback to light targets increased from 3 to 4.5. So I'm inclined to say, because I don't think we can knock back Moabs, so let me just confirm that. So there is no knockback to Moabs, so I'm guessing that heavy targets simply means leads and ceramics. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm inclined to believe is the case. So there's a pink balloon with the knockback right there, and then there's a ceramic with reduced knockback, it looks like. So there we go, and the knockback does look to be pretty helpful, especially in certain situations, but there it did look solid. And then we have a price decrease for the Super Monkey Fan Club, down from $8,000 to $7,500 right there. So next up we have the Boomerang Monkey, which is a little bit cheaper now, $315 instead of $325 to place. Next up we have the Moab Domination. It now has a projectile pierce for the main boomerangs, not the anti-Moab Kylies. So just the typical regular ones now have a pierce of 54 instead of 18 like before. So let's go ahead and send out a ton of rainbows right there, and look at how quickly and easily we're popping them simply because of that extra pierce. So that is pretty nice. Then we have the 205, which will now have 81 pierce instead of 27. So let's go ahead and send out, let's go with round 63. I don't know if this is going to end up being enough or too much, and it looks like it's not too much. So there we go. We can now solo round 63, it looks like, with this tower, even though it's not a balloon popping power tower. Next up we have the Glaive Lord. Its main attack can now bounce back to the same target with a cooldown of 0.6 seconds. So let's go ahead and just send out a ton of Moabs right there. It's not, like, very easy to tell what's going on, but let's go ahead and see. So it looks like maybe these last Moabs may cause some issues, but yeah, just a few at the end. So not that bad, but again, it's hard to tell. So maybe we should send them out with some more spacing. So yeah, it's a little easier to tell now with the bouncing back to the same targets again. So I like this change. That way, if there aren't that many balloons on screen, you can still maximize this tower's pierce to a better extent at least. Next up, we have the Bloon Crush. Damage increased from 12 all the way to 24, so it's doubled. And the Frag Bombs damage increased from 12 to 24 as well. However, the frags no longer deal bonus damage to ceramics, so they're the same as they were before against ceramics, but twice as strong against non-ceramics. So let's go ahead and test this out. Let's have them more grouped. So let's test against Moabs right here. So it's not that bad actually. It is actually more decent for popping, for actually popping rather than just stalling. So that is nice. That way the stalling will be just a little bit less annoying, especially if you don't have that much more money or that many other towers to work with. Next up, Ninja Kiwi decided to at least partially revert a nerf to the Bomb Blitz, so it will now deal 5 damage instead of 3 damage like it was before. Unfortunately, it can't pop black balloons, which is annoying, but let's go ahead and see here. So it can pop ceramics just fine with no issues. Same with fortified ceramics, because it can skip over the black and zebra layers. But it does look to be better now. I'm not going to complain about this, but I still think that the black balloon weakness is kind of stupid, given that it's a 5th tier bomb shooter, and the other 2 5th tiers, I'm pretty sure both of them, let me just test the Moab Eliminator. Yeah, it can pop black balloons without issue, so I think that the Bomb Blitz should be able to as well, even if that means that its DPS would be a little lower. So that's just my take though. So let me know if you think this tower is balanced, because I feel like it's overpowered against non-black balloons but underpowered against black balloons. That's just my opinion though. Next up, we have the Tack Shooter, decreased from $280 to $260 in base cost. The more tax and even more tax increased from $100 to $110 each. So if you get an XX2 tax shooter or higher, you will not be spending any more or less than you did before. But if you don't get this cross path or this path, then it will be $20 cheaper. Next, we have the Blade Maelstrom, damage increased from 1 to 2. Let's go ahead and test against just 10 black balloons right here. So it looks like that only applies to the ability, not to the actual base attack. So let's try 10 fortified Moabs. And these are a little strong, but if we were to test against just some fortified ceramics right there, it's not as bad. So let's go right there. And I mean, it's not all that good. Maybe it's the pierce thing. But let's try one last time right here. So yeah, I mean, tower placement obviously will play a significant role in how good it is, and that's not the best location for this type of tower, but we'll have to see how this turns out. Also, Pierce nerfed from 200 down to 100. So in most cases, it's probably a buff, but in races, as well as late in the game, it will possibly be weaker. The damage of the Super Maelstrom is unchanged, however, it's also getting a Pierce nerf this time from 500 down to 300. So, I can see why Ninja Kiwi would do this for races, but I don't like this for the regular game. I feel like for the regular game, it's just not a good thing to have in the game, but that's just my opinion. Let me know if you agree or not. No changes for the Ice Monkey, so let's move on to the Glue Gunner. Stickier Glue 401. If you have that cross path, the puddles that are placed on the track will last one extra round. So let's go ahead and send out round 28 right here, nothing too serious. And then we send it out again, and the puddles will last further. Although this is sandbox mode, and when I keep sending out round 28 again and again and again, it does not work the way that I want it to work, because it just restarts the round instead of sending out multiple copies of the round, so to speak. So it's not something you can really see in sandbox, but it will make a difference in some cases. Next up, Bloon Solver. Don't know why I sold there, but the Bloon Solver will now have only 4 pierce instead of 5, so if you want to take advantage of that bottom cross path buff, you will not have as much pierce. So you'll have to go for the middle path if you want to make up for that. So let's go ahead and continue with the next tower getting a change, the Glue Splatter. Decreased in price from $14.50 down to $9.70, and the pierce buff from this upgrade is only 2, not 3 anymore. Glue Storm, the ability duration of the actual Glue Storm effect is being reduced from 20 to 15 seconds, and the slow effect of the glue applied onto the balloons is only going to be 50%, not 75% anymore, unless you get 052, in which case it goes back to 75%, but it won't be 90% like it was previously. So there's a bit of a nerf there. I don't know if I agree with this. I can understand how it may be really good for its cost and thus warrant a nerf, but I feel like it's not a commonly used tower, and generally nerfing towers that are not commonly used is something that I don't see a reason to do, especially because Ninja Kiwi probably wants like every tower and every upgrade path of every tower to be used close to the same amount, rather than having, like, you know, Bloon Jitsu be used by 90% of the player base, and then having I don't know, Middle Path Alchemist, or whatever, like the Transforming Tonic and Total Transformation used by only like 3% of players. But maybe I'm wrong, maybe Ninja Kiwi does like skewing of the tower use variability, or maybe they had other reasons for applying this because of either races or bosses or something else that I'm not as familiar with. So let's take a look at Relentless Glue, which is more expensive now. Instead of $3,000, it's $3,400 right there. So that's it for the primary monkeys. Now let's move on to the military monkeys. And overall, I do like most of these changes, especially the Juggernaut knockback. And the Bomb Blitz getting a little stronger once again, and the Bloon Crush is nice as well. And the Top Path Glue Gunner, I like those changes. I'm not big on the Blade Maelstrom and Super Maelstrom nerf though, or making certain Boomerang monkeys, especially Moab Dom, that much stronger, because they're meant to pop Moabs, not balloons. So that may be a little overboard, but let's get on to the next tower, the Sniper Monkey. So Shrapnel Shot will get some cross-pathing changes, specifically with the top path. So the damage of the shrapnel itself is going to be 2 rather than 1 like it was before. Damage of the shrapnel with large caliber, a 220, will be 3. Notice the pink balloons and then the blue balloons, etc. However, the shrapnel damage for deadly precision, 320, is the same as it was before, that being 4. So that is an interesting change, but I think that may be good. It may be good, especially like if you wanted to go for bouncing bullet or maybe even an elite sniper with the top cross path. That may make that significantly better of a tower. Next up, we have some changes with the Cripple Moab, the 5th tier. Shrapnel shot pierce increased from 2 to 3. So that will be pretty interesting. Also, Cripple Moab regardless of cross path, right here, will have a splash effect around the main target, a radius of 8 units, a pierce of 10, and a damage of 28. So let's go ahead and see here how this ends up working. Notice that even though we don't have a cross path, it's like we have the shrapnel because of the fact that there is that change. Now let's upgrade to 502 for the attack speed and see how we do against 10 BFBs. So it's not crazy good, so that's probably a good thing. And it looks like the targets affected by the splash can sometimes, but don't always, get stunned. So, not sure why that is, that's a sometimes thing. Or maybe it's only because of the popping the BFB into Moabs, so that's why all 4 of them were stunned at the same time. But I do like that Ninja Kiwi is showing some love to the top path sniper, because I feel like it definitely has a lot of potential in this game, but there aren't a lot of players who use it. Next up, we have Monkey Sub. So when you go for a Bloontonium reactor, the dart and airburst damage when not submerged is being increased from 1 to 2. So let's go ahead and get something that doesn't deal damage, just Monkey Village right there, and let's send out 10 pink balloons right there. Notice how they pop into greens, then reds. That is because of the buff. And with airburst darts, if we send out, let's say, 10 rainbows instead of 10 pinks, we do manage to pop them all. So, not bad, but I would still say let's submerge this again and send out the 10 rainbows again, and we pop them much more easily that way. So it seems like this is a micro thing that may have some benefit against Moab class balloons, but that's probably about it. So that is an interesting change, but a change that's not likely to do all that much in most cases. Next up, we have the Energizer. 502 Energizer price decreased. Actually, it's supposed to say 5XX, not 502. Because you don't need a cross path for this to take place, but the price is being decreased from 32,000 to 31,000. 520 specifically will deal when submerged only, plus 5 lead damage. So that's 10 damage per tick to these DDTs. And again, DDTs aren't the type of balloon that you're best off popping with an Energizer, but that is just something I wanted to showcase so that way you could see the buff in action, because it would be boring to just send out typical old leads and they get popped like instantly. But let's see that anyway, just for fun. and they do get one-shotted. What about fortified lids? Are they one-shotted? They are as well. Okay, good to see. Next up, we have the Nordic Siege Corps, which is getting 2 changes, and those relate to its buffing of heroes when submerged. So, if you have a hero and you submerge this right here, now the buff becomes active. And that buff will make your heroes, believe it or not, attack slower, but deal much more damage. So let's just send out a bunch of pinks right there, and notice how they get popped pretty easily by Rosalia. And even when we send rainbows, they get popped pretty easily. Ceramics, one-shotted even. So this may look good on the surface, but given how expensive this tower is and its ability to put out a lot of damage when not submerged, I don't think this is really going to change anything. It's just what I believe though. But the Paragon hero attack cooldown increase reduced from 1.5 times to 1.3 times. So heroes will still attack slower by the looks of these notes while being buffed by this tower, but they will deal quintuple damage instead of quadruple damage. So overall, it's better, but I don't feel like it's enough to actually truly incentivize players to submerge the sub-Paragon at any time other than when trying to get other Paragons and preventing the sub-Paragon from stealing too many pops. So let's take a look at the Monkey Buccaneer, which is next. Base price reduced from 500 to 400. Destroyer increased from 2950 to 3050 in price. Merchantman increased from 2300 to 2400. So if you go for at least a 3rd tier top or bottom path, it's the same cost as before the update in the end. But if you go for a middle path or no higher than a tier 2, it will be a little bit cheaper. Also, Navarch of the Seas will now have a XP unlock cost of not 500,000 but 750,000. So Ninja Kiwi said in the patch notes that they want to do that, that they see that as a necessary change because of the fact that the Paragon scales extremely strongly compared to the tier 5s, and it continues to make money. It's not just a raw damage tower, it also makes money at the same time with the Trade Empire buff. So if you go for a bunch of merchantmen, you will get that buff from Navarch without needing to get another Trade Empire. So with all that in mind, this does make some sense. Not going to question it because I don't have access to all the data that Ninja Kiwi does, but I guess it's a fair change. Next up, we have some changes to the Monkey Ace. The Exploding Pineapple will have an attack cooldown of 1.6 seconds, not 1.7 seconds. So they will be getting deployed a little bit quicker, which is nice to see, given that it's not the most useful type of, it's not the most useful kind of upgrade with its random deployment and whatnot. I believe that this will not affect the bomber race, that tower will have the same attack speed as before, but it is a nice change. I don't expect it to make a big difference, but I do like the change, nevertheless. Next up, we have the Flying Fortress, which now has its radial dart attack dealing 6 damage instead of 3. So, I don't think this is going to change all that much. I still think that the Flying Fortress should either be nerfed or made more expensive, given how ridiculously powerful it is for its cost. If we send out a round 140 bad, actually that's 10 of them, but it may not seem to be doing that much. But if we just wait a little bit, the fact that it is able to significantly damage these bad balloons as much as it is, and it's dealing like close to 50,000 damage to each one. I mean, for its cost, it's definitely overpowered, and without the attack speed from the rapid fire or any buffs, it's able to more than half pop around 140 bad with no support. So I still think it should be nerfed, but then again, it is a really fun tower to use, so I can see myself like taking advantage of its cheap cost until whenever it is that Ninja Kiwi decides to nerf it. Next up, we have the Goliath Doom Ship getting a handful of changes. So let's go right there. And the Seeking Radials now are fired out 8 at a time instead of 4. And they will deal 300 damage instead of 200, with 300 boss damage instead of 200. So before it was 200 damage to non-bosses, 400 to bosses because of the 200 extra. Now it's 300 to non-bosses, 600 to bosses. So let's go ahead and just see right here what we can do to these bad balloons. And even without anything like, no like micro or anything, let's try round 140 bad balloons this time. So here we can see the DPS going up by, like in some cases it's like multiple hundreds of thousands of DPS, depending on where the tower is, but overall it does look to be better now. That said, there are only 12 non-seeking radials instead of 16, and they will deal more damage though, from 200 to 300, same with the boss damage, but the frontal gun is being made weaker, 150 damage and 150 boss damage instead of 300 of each. So overall, this looks like a buff rather than a nerf, and given that the Goliath Doom Ship has relatively underwhelming DPS aside from its ability for its cost, I like this change. I think it's a good change, so we will have to see how that ends up working over time, but I think it's a good change overall. Next up, we have the Helipilot. So we have some changes for this. One change for the middle path, that being that the deployable Marine, we drop him right there. Pretend this is Chimps mode. You can still sell him. So the reason for that is presumably that the Marine is not a tower, but rather a temporary monkey that can be deployed for an ability. That way you can control or limit how much DPS you're dealing. If you don't want to pop a ton of Moabs into ceramics at a time, let's say, because the ceramics will end up overwhelming you and getting to the end of the track too fast, that kind of thing. So it has its situational uses, but for the most part, I don't see the need to sell the Marine in Chimps, but again, everything has its uses. So let's go ahead and look at the bottom path now. Comanche Defense Mini's attack rate is being nerfed from once every 0.151848 seconds to once every 0.228 seconds. So overall, this looks like a 50%-ish attack rate nerf For the mini Comanches, it does not affect the main plane. The mini heli dart damage increased though from 2 to 3. Missile damage for the minis increased from 1 to 4. Pierce nerfed from 80 to 60. Ceramic damage bonus increased from 1 to 2. So instead of 2 damage total to ceramics, I'll go all the way up to 6. Moab bonus removed entirely, down from 2 to 0. So instead of 3 damage to Moabs, it's 4 damage to Moabs because of the big damage buff overall to the missiles. So, overall, it seems like it'll be better, because the darts will basically be the same damage per second, because it's 50% slower, but 50% more damage, and the missiles should be even better than that. Whereas the 5th tier Comanche Commander mini Comanches, those will deal 10 bonus damage to ceramics instead of 1, but no Moab bonus damage. It was 8 before. So, seems like this tower won't be all that good against Moabs. I don't know for sure, but let's see right here. So I'm not sure why there are no mini Comanches. Okay, never mind, there are. Let's get Pursuit and Quad Darts and see. So, it may not look bad at first glance, but we can't ignore that the Moab damage bonus went all the way down from +8 to +0. So, like, those Moabs at the end of the track, like, they got a fair distance before being popped. That said, the darts are still as strong against Moabs as they were before. It's just the missiles that are weaker. But, I don't know. I think that the Comanche Commander is a decent tower. It's not strong. It's not, like, all that powerful for its cost. But at the same time, I can see, that Ninja Kiwi doesn't want it being too powerful or seeming too powerful for its price, but it does seem like it is outclassed by a fair number of other towers of a similar price, in most situations at least. Next up, we have 3 changes for the Mortar Monkey. Artillery battery price increased from 5,500 to 5,900, and the Blue Incineration with the top crosspath. 105 firewalls will now have 36 pierce instead of 25, and 205 firewalls will deal 3 damage to non-Moab class balloons instead of 2 per tick. So, given the low usage rates of the Blue Incineration and the high usage rates of the artillery battery, I'd say these are pretty good changes. I like them simple, and they should make a difference. No changes for Dartling gun, so let's move straight to the Wizard Monkey. Cheaper now, $325 instead of $375, which does mean you can do a double wizard start on medium difficulty with no monkey knowledge. That said, you cannot start with 2 wizards and chimps because that uses hard pricing. But some of these towers, with their prices being lower, such as the Boomerang and the Buccaneer and all of that, will affect how you can start things out on Chimps mode. Like the Buccaneer, for example, I think would be like 430 on hard mode if it's 400 on medium. And as such, the Dart Monkey as well, 215 instead of 200. And you add those together, that's 645, which is less than the 650 you get to start. So you can do a Dart Monkey and Monkey Buccaneer start in Chimps now. You couldn't do that before. So that can change some strategies in Chimps mode and make it easier to at least start the game. But it may not affect things all that much later on. Next up, we have the Arcane Mastery. increased from $1,300 to $1,400. Shimmer Pierce increased from $200 all the way to $500. So that is going to be nice. And then we have the Fireball 210. When you get this tower, the cross path damage will be 2 for the Fireball instead of 1. So let's go ahead and undo the ramping right there. That way the balloons come out at their regular speeds. So it's hard to tell certain times, but there was a bolt that came out and then a Fireball that came out, and some of the pinks went all the way down to reds. So 2 damage from the bolts and 2 damage from the Fireballs. There you go. Dragon's Breath Fireball projectile count increased from 1 to 3. However, 3 damage instead of 9. So in most cases, it's basically the same as it was before, but it's Pierce for the Dragon's Breath attack. I presume this is not the Fireball, because it doesn't say Fireball, it just says Dragon's Breath in the patch notes. Pierce reduced from 4 to 3, so Dragon's Breath is a pretty good tower, so it looks like it may be a little bit weaker, at least in certain situations, but with 230 from the Fireball damage being increased, maybe that will carry over. Maybe it'll mean 4 damage per Fireball instead of 3. So let's just send out a Moab right here and see what happens. It's hard to tell, but you can see the 3 Fireballs. You just can't really see like how much damage each one is doing. So that is a little difficult to tell. Unfortunately, it looks like the crosspath may not work as far as the extra Fireball damage once you get Dragon's Breath, but I don't know. Next, we have the Wizard Lord Phoenix. Wall of Fire attack damage increased from 3 to 5. Fireball damage reduced from 27 to 9. So, I mean, I can kind of understand this, but not all that much. So let's take a look. Wizard Lord Phoenix's Wall of Fire hasn't had any meaningful upgrade progression, so that says why it's changing that there. Maybe it's just because they're buffing the Wall of Fire and they want to rework the tower rather than just making it stronger altogether. So that's probably why it's like that now. And then we have one change with the Magus Perfectus as well. That being that its experience cost to initially unlock the Paragon is being increased from 500,000 to 1 million. So Ninja Kiwi says the reason they're doing this is because of the fact that it's a more advanced, in-depth tower. It's not just raw DPS. You have its mana, its 2 abilities, and all that stuff to worry about, and changing modes to recharge mana versus to use it but have stronger attacks and all of that. So because of that, they decided to make it 1 million XP instead of 500,000. But in exchange, the Ninja Paragon, the Ascended Shadow, will cost only 500,000 XP instead of 1 million XP like it used to be. So that is cool, I suppose. Which makes sense because the Ascended Shadow is a simpler tower than the Magus. It's more beginner friendly because it's just a DPS machine with no micro generally required. Next up we have the Super Monkey. So Super Monkey's projectile speed for the darts is being reduced from 280 to 200. So its attack speed is the same, but the projectile speed is lower, which means it's more likely to miss its targets. Let's just send out bunch of rainbows, couple ceramics right there. It's hard to really tell what's different, but yeah, it's definitely going to have some cases in which it will miss its targets that it wouldn't before. But once you get epic range, this is good. That's that the projectile speed is still 350 like it was before the update. So the epic range upgrade gives you a 75% projectile speed bonus instead of 25% like before. Also, the anti-bloon is cheaper, 70,000 instead of 80,000, so that's cool. That may be a little bit of a stretch given how strong the tower is, but we will have to see. Then again, they did make the Tech Tower more expensive not that long ago, so we'll see. We'll see how it works. And then we have the Legend of the Night, which now has a maximum number of times you can use its ability per round, that being 2. So let's go ahead right here, and we will just send out a couple DDTs. So there is the ability, so it still has a cooldown, given that it does not activate there. But let's see. So yeah, it still has a cooldown because it's not activating yet, so we're going to have to wait for it to start up again, for it to be used again. But it still has a long cooldown, it looks like, because we're losing a lot of lives here and the portal is not coming back yet. So I presume that this is a nerf, not a rework, because of the fact that it does not mention, and I'm not seeing anything to indicate that the cooldown is being removed. So the cooldown is still in effect, and there's the limit of 2 ability uses per round. So that's only really going to change things if you're going late game, like far into free play, like round 250 plus maybe. So no comment on that, but I can see why Ninja Kiwi is putting this into the game. Next up, we have the Ninja Monkey. So Ninja Monkey is cheaper now, $400 instead of $500. Ninja Kiwi has a base attack cooldown of 0.62 seconds instead of 0.7 seconds. So it is a little bit faster now, so that's cool. Notice how 2 layers are popped on for the pink bloons down to greens, and then the yellow bloons get popped into nothing, given the buff to the attack speed. However, the Ninja Discipline will only give a 30% attack cooldown reduction instead of 38% like before, and this is for all attacks, not just shurikens. So I'm guessing that it's basically the same as it was before the update if you get this tower, but or this upgrade more specifically, but it's an interesting change. Also, Ninja Discipline is more expensive, $350 instead of $300, and the Caltrops attack cooldown reduced from 4.4 seconds to 3.9 seconds. Obviously, they get deployed faster with Ninja Discipline than without. And Sticky Bomb attack cooldown reduced from 5 seconds to 4.5 seconds. So let's take a look here, and the sticky bombs do get deployed fairly quickly, so that's not bad. I like that. Double shot is more expensive, $900 instead of $850, which means that if you go for a 3XX Ninja or higher, it will be the same cost total as before, factoring in the upgrades as well. Next up, we have the Distraction Ninja, decreased from $350 to $250 in cost. Counter Espionage down from $500 to $400 in cost. Shinobi Tactics up from $900 to $1,200 in cost. That's a $300 increase. but given the $100 discounts to the base Ninja and the tiers 1 and 2, it's the same cost overall as before. And Seeking Shuriken is a little bit more pricey, $300 instead of $250, and Caltrops $450 instead of $400. So if you go for at least a double shot, a Shinobi Tactics, or Caltrops, it's the same cost overall. That said, some cross paths may be more expensive, so take that into account as well. And obviously the Ascended Shadow, 500,000 XP instead of 1,000,000 XP to unlock, so you can get that faster if you haven't unlocked it already. No changes for the Alchemist, so let's go to the Druid. Jungle's Bounty has gotten a bit of a rework. Now generates 1 life per ability cast, not 1 life per round. So let's go ahead and use this. It does not give me extra lives, but let's set to 1 life right there, 2 lives, 3 lives, and so on. Notice how you can get extra lives and all of that, like so. Next up, Spirit of the Forest no longer passively generates lives per round, but it does give you 25 lives per ability use, so that is cool. And then we have the Heart of Vengeance, lost lives maximum rate bonus, as in the maximum increase in the attack speed to that Druid with that upgrade or cross path will only be 50% faster instead of 100% faster, but you still presumably need to let's see, max is at 100%, so it says max is at 100% in the game, so Ninja Kiwi did not update that description yet. So I'm wondering, because it does not specify here, but it looks like it's still going to be 1% extra attack speed per life lost, so you'll only need to lose 50 lives instead of 100 lives to reach this new lower maximum attack speed. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I am interpreting out of this. Also, the reason that Ninja Kiwi is making the 4th and 5th tier middle path no longer generate lives passively each round is for strategies based on Heart of Vengeance. That way you can use those strategies without healing the vengeance away, so to speak. So that is that. Let's get on to the banana farm. These changes solely involve the Monkey Wall Street. It's more expensive now, $70,000 instead of $60,000. However, its range is now 75. Notice that bigger range circle compared to before. And that's nice. That way you can get it to auto-collect for more of your surrounding farms. And also generates 15 lives per round instead of 10. So that is nice. Next up, Spike Factory. Fair number of changes to go through here. So the Spike Storm now has an ability cooldown of 50 seconds instead of 45 seconds. However, let's also take a look at this. Ability Spike's minimum duration reduced from 10 to 9 seconds, maximum duration from 13 to 11 seconds. So overall it looks like a nerf, which, so yeah, it has a longer cooldown, and the spikes that are deployed when you use the ability will not last as long. So overall it's a nerf. However, the duration bonus for ability spikes is going up from 50% to 100% if you get the 041, the long reach upgrade. So instead of going up from 10 to 15 seconds minimum and 13 to 19 and a half seconds maximum, you'll be going up from 9 to 18 seconds minimum and 11 to 22 seconds maximum. So overall, you will get longer lasting spikes if you go for this bottom cross path even than you did before. So I think this is Ninja Kiwi trying to make it so that this cross path is better that way. It's not an obvious case of just going bigger stacks and white hot spikes all the time. So I do like that. I like when Ninja Kiwi wants both cross paths to be one as good as the other, or at the very least, cross path X is better in situation A, whereas cross path Y is better in situation B. So that is that. Spike stormability, spike's duration remains at 18 to 22 seconds regardless of cross path for the Carpet of Spikes. And the Carpet of Spikes is a little bit more pricey, $42,000 instead of $40,000. And Long Life Spikes is getting a price decrease, $1,400 down to $1,300. And Deadly Spikes is more expensive in turn, $3,600 instead of $3,500. So that's it for the Spike Factory. Next up, we have the Monkey Village Primary Expertise Bounce Distance. I'm guessing this means that the ballista attack can ricochet to targets that are farther away from one another. Bounce distance buffed from 50 to 90. However, the Monkeyopolis is getting a nerf. So the Monkeyopolis now has a base cash amount of $1,000, not $1,250 per round. So overall, this should definitely make the Minneapolis strategy less effective. However, if you get a big enough Monkeyopolis, it should not really change things, like, significantly. So, at least not all that much. But I don't know if I like that change or not. I can see why they're making that change, given that the Minneapolis strategy was broken not that long ago. I want to say not that long ago, but like 5 to 8 versions ago, as opposed to in the last couple versions it wasn't as good, and now it's not as good as it was a couple of updates ago. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments, guys, because I don't know what I think of that. Next up, we have the Monkey Engineer, cheaper for its base cost, $350 instead of $400. Sentries will now spawn at 1xx within 20% of their range to the track. So in other words, the deployment of the sentries is less random. I'm not sure why this sentry that I have highlighted was dropped there, because it's not that close to the track. Maybe it's a bug, but most of the sentries, and again, this one isn't that well placed either, but most of them appear to be better placed. Next up, we have the 5th tier along this path. Damage increased. It says Sentry Champagne in the patch notes. Not sure if that's intentional or not. I'm inclined to believe it is intentional because it says Sentry Champion right before it. But yes, so this tower will now have damage of 3 instead of 2. So that's nice. Cleansing Foam. Let's take a look at this. Increased in cost from $850 to $900. Overclock Foam Pierce increased from 10 to 15. Double Gun is a little cheaper. Let's go ahead and get another engineer here. Didn't mean to place it there in particular. $450 instead of $500. However, The Bloon Trap is more expensive, $3,600 instead of $3,500, for a net increase of $50. But given the nature of the Bloon Trap, you can, in most cases, make that money back pretty easily. Next up, we have some changes for the Beast Handler. I'll try and get through these as quickly as possible because there are kind of a lot of them to go through. So, Piranha reduced from 170 to 160 in cost. Barracuda down from 850 to 810. Great White down from 2075 to 2010. Microraptor down from 195 to 175. Adasaurus down from 890 to 830. Velociraptor down from 2170 to 2065. Gyrfalcon down from 210 to 190. Horned Owl down from 940 to 860. Golden Eagle down all the way from 3150 to 2120. That said, Golden Eagle will no longer be able to pick up Moabs. The Pierce penalty was increased so much that it will not matter if you have even a max beast power Golden Eagle. It will not be able to grab Moabs anymore and drag them back. But the Golden Eagle has Pierce of 30 now instead of 15. Pierce range went up from 30 to 60. And the attack cooldown range, I'm not sure why it says attack cooldown range instead of attack cooldown, changed from once every 0.28679625 seconds to simply 0.28 seconds. So it sounds like it's going to attack a little bit faster. So overall it looks better apart from not being able to grab Moabs anymore. But given the fourth tier is unchanged in terms of its ability to pick up and drag back Moabs, shouldn't be like a bad thing for the third tier. Plus there are many other ways of handling Moabs in the game. So Giant Condor, ceramic pierce penalty reduced from 1 to 0, so grabbing a ceramic will count as grabbing 1 bloon, not 2 bloons. Simply put, so it can grab that many more ceramics or that many more bloons while some of them are ceramics. Also, grabbing BFBs, pierce penalty reduced from 44 to 29, so a BFB will count as 30 bloons or 30 pierce, not 45, so it can pick up more stuff while picking up a BFB. So that's cool. Next up we have the top path, Great White Shark. So we have to get it somewhere else. Let's get it right there. So, Great White Shark. Damage increased from 8 to 12. Damage range from 16 to 24. That way it's a better transitional tower on the way to getting an Orca. That's what Ninja Kiwi has listed in the patch notes. Next up, Piranha now spawns within 20% of its range to the track. Microraptor spawns within 30% of its range to the track. So that's cool as well, just for some simple convenience, just like the sentry guns for the engineer. Next up, we have one final beast handler change, that being that its cooldown when you redeploy a beast will last only 2 seconds instead of 3 seconds. So you will be able to micro a little bit better with this tower. You won't be as restricted by that cooldown as before. And that is it for tower balance changes, but there are some hero changes to go over as well. Apologies if you couldn't hear me as well just now, because I did have my phone on the table rather than in my hand, but I hope you guys can still hear me fairly well, and I don't see that being an issue, but let me know if it is, and I'll try and be a little bit more conscious in my future videos if it is an issue. But let's get on to the hero balance changes next. So I will cut the video here and be back in a minute. Okay, so we are back, and let's go over the hero balance changes real quick. So first we have Quincy, who at going from level 3 to 4, 4 to 5, etc., used to gain half a second on his rapid shot ability, but now he will no longer get extra duration at each specific level. Instead, he will get flat increases starting at level 3, and then another one at level 13. So at level 3, his rapid shot ability, when we use it, we have monkey knowledge off, so that's why he was level 1.
Come on!
Notice how it lasts for 8 seconds instead of 3.5 seconds. And it used to be that you needed a level 12 Quincy in order to get the 8-second rapid shot. But now levels 3 to 12 will have that duration. Starting at level 13, his rapid shot will be 12 seconds instead of the 8.5 seconds that it was before, which corresponds to what used to be his rapid shot duration at level 20. So overall, at all levels except for 12 and 20, this is a buff. So, and 1 and 2, of course, because he doesn't have his ability then. But overall, it's a buff, and I like it because Quincy is more of a starter hero than most, so I would say that's a good thing because his power does not tend to scale, at least historically speaking. It has not scaled all that well as with other heroes that are newer and stronger and that are more popular these days, so I think this is a good thing for Quincy. Next up, we have Gwendolyn, and at level 4, Gwendolyn's Heated Up will have a minimum delay instead of 4.5 seconds of 1.5 seconds. And I'm inclined to believe that this is a buff. So let's see, the 4.5 second internal cooldown still limits it from being scaled up far, so that internal cooldown is now also being reduced. So to allow for much more frequent triggering from attacks. I presume that means from attacks of other towers, like to buff them. So I'm inclined to believe that this is a buff. I don't know for certain, but judging by how I am reading this, I believe it's a buff. And then we have also at level 17, something that is definitely a buff. Notice how it says, Heated Up empowers affected monkeys to pop 1 extra layer and do +2 damage to lead balloons instead of +1, like it was before. So that's nice as well. That means that you will be able to use Gwendolyn better at higher levels for supporting DDT popping power, assuming you have camo detection and black popping power taken care of. And overall, I like this change as well, because Gwendolyn, similarly to Quincy, is more of a starter hero, so allowing more advanced strategies to still utilize her and her strengths and capabilities, I would say, is good for the game.
What next?
Okay, so for Oben next, we have that his level 8 Nature's Wrath will additionally grant camo detection to druids in his radius. So he gets Nature's Wrath at first at level 2, but it will be improved at level 8, like his description says right there, and that means that they will be able to pop camos like so. Let's get a druid here, and let's send out just some camo greens right there, and the druid pops them just fine. And I like this change as well, because it will help against DDTs later on, as long as you have lead and black popping power taken care of. And it'll also help against just camo balloons in general, like round 78, for example, with the 75 camo ceramics rush at the end of the round. So stuff like that will be good, and so yeah, I think this is another good buff, similarly to the reasons I explained for Quincy and Gwendolyn, and I like this change, and maybe I will use Oben more often because of it. Okay, so for Benjamin, we do have a change here, and this looks like a slight nerf overall, and that's that at level 4, he used to get skimming, but now he will get cybersecurity instead of skimming. And at level 6, he used to get cybersecurity.
5 stars.
So he will be getting the skimming ability at level 6, which is still good. So they're not like removing it or anything, so he will still be good later on in the game, especially for getting you money. That said, I can't really think of any scenarios where cybersecurity would be all that necessary at level 4. I mean, sure, if you're leaking a lot of balloons because of wanting to save up for a farm or wanting to save up for Benjamin or something like that, it can be useful. That said, generally, in most cases, you'll get more out of skimming than you will out of cybersecurity, especially early on in the game. So this looks like a nerf to me, but it does make sense, because Ninja Kiwi did make Benjamin generate less money per round at low levels and a lot more money at higher levels. So this fits that theme of making him not all that good or not all that helpful or worthwhile early on, but making him one of the best heroes in the game later on. So I'm not going to say I agree or disagree with this change, but it does make sense for why Ninja Kiwi did it, to fit the way that they've reworked Benjamin in the previous update better. So for Brickle, there is one change in this update, and that's that due to player feedback, it seems Ninja Kiwi has decided to revert the Mega Mine cooldown nerf that they implemented in a previous update, because it used to be that the Mega Mine cooldown was not quite as long as 45 seconds, but then they made it 45 seconds so that it was a little bit harder to use, or a little bit less versatile in that sense, but they did decide to decrease the cooldown back down from 45 seconds to 40 seconds, so you can use it that, like, there are some situations where you wouldn't have been able to use it the way it was before, but you can use it more often once again. So I haven't played with Brickle that much, so I can't really say whether I think this is a necessary change or not, but it is good that they're listening to player feedback, I would say. So for Etienne, there's a simple change that will affect him at all levels, unless there's something that increases the drone projectile speed, the darts projectile speed at higher levels, in which case it may not affect him at all levels, but it does affect him from level 1, and that's that the projectile speed for all drones is being increased from 150 to 250. So the darts, once fired, will travel 2/3 faster than before, which does mean that they will be less likely to miss their targets. So still misses the pink balloon there, but it is in a better spot now. So let's see if we can try this again. We'll just sell, rebuy, and try with a yellow balloon there. It still misses, unfortunately, but if we were to place Etienne a little bit closer right there, we have no problem popping the yellow balloon. Pink balloon isn't quite as easy, but let's try it one last time. And sort of the same thing, so as long as he's not placed too far from the track to where the drone will be too far from the track and thus have a longer distance for its projectiles to have to go to hit their target, then it shouldn't be something that like still results in any issues. But I would say this is a good change. Not a perfect change, but it is a good change. Okay, so we have a simple change for Psy in this update, similarly to Benjamin's level 4 and level 6 switching. Psy's level 11 and level 13 have been switched. That way, Psy will only need to be level 11 to pop purple balloons, as opposed to level 13 like before, and at level 13, Psy's attacks will pop the balloons faster, as opposed to level 11. So in some situations this would be considered a buff, but in other situations it's not really all that good for the player. So I'm inclined to believe that this is more of a nerf than a buff, because purple popping power is probably not as important in most situations as just faster attack speed or faster popping of the balloons once Psy locks onto a target. So that's just me, but some others may see it as more of a buff rather than a nerf. But it only affects a couple levels, but levels 10 and lower and levels 13 and higher are not affected by this change, so it's nothing too drastic at least. Okay, so the next hero getting some balance changes in this update is Geraldo. So, starting at level 2, the Quincy action figure now costs $650 instead of $700 by default. So, I feel like this can be a good thing in some cases and a bad thing in others. The reason I say that is because if it's cheaper, you can get it sooner, but at the same time, its value, because its increase in value is percentage based, not flat per round, it won't increase in value as quickly. So overall, I feel like this is more of a good thing, though, due to the fact that, one, there are plenty of other sources of income in the game, so if you get its value high enough, you can switch to farms or something else like that for focusing on getting more money from there. So overall, I would say this is more of a buff than a nerf. Next up, let's look at level 6.
Let me check my stuff.
The Worn Cape will now be able to have a max stock of 3 instead of 2. However, it will only, one cape will restock once every 7 rounds instead of once every 5 rounds. So they'll stock slower, but you will be able to have more of them at once waiting for you in Geraldo's shop. So it's not outright a buff or a nerf, it's simply a rework, but overall I'd say this is good, because as long as you're not spamming these like crazy, you can get more benefit out of them, while Ninja Kiwi is working to curtail players getting too many too quickly, by just maximizing the ability to get them right off the bat, because if you do that, then it can be an overpowered strategy. Next up, at level 7, didn't mean to do that. At level 7, Blade Trap will now, you will now be able to have up to 4 of them stocked at once before you need to use one in order for more to be restocked. Level 8, Jerry's fire duration reduced from 10 rounds down to 5. And I'd say this is justified given the fact that just how strong Jerry's fire is, and at least it's still 10 rounds once you get up to level 16 for the enhanced Jerry's Fire, which will be not only stronger but also last longer instead of just being stronger like before. Next we have Fertilizer, which has been given a bit of a rework. So max stock increased from 2 to 4, rounds to replenish reduced from 5 to 3, so you can get them faster. And they will work on all banana farms. So if we were to get a monkey bank and okay, we only have one there, but we can use the fertilizer right there and it works on the monkey bank. So that is pretty nice. That you can now have the fertilizer work on all farms instead of just top path and up to second tier along the other paths like before. The only drawback is that the cash bonus is being reduced from 25% down to 20%, but I would say that is justifiable given all the other ways that the fertilizer has gotten better in this update. Next up at level 11, Geraldo's Jar of Pickles will now no longer deal bonus damage to fortified bloons. That said, it does kind of make sense because of the fact that it just deals more damage overall. So as long as you're using it on a tower that has a fast attack speed and low damage per shot, you will still be able to get a bonus out of this. And if too many things in the game have like deal bonus damage to fortified bloons, then there's not much of a point to there being fortified bloons in the game, so I do understand this change. Shooty Turret version 2, this one with the red on the arrows. This one used to deal 7 damage, but it's now only going to deal 6 damage. And given how strong they are, I can understand this change, because Geraldo is definitely one of the strongest heroes in the game. And finally, at level 16, the Jar of Pickles fortified bonus damage is being reduced from 2 to 1, so you will still get somewhat of a fortified damage bonus once you get the Jar of Pickles or Geraldo up to level 16 for the improved Jar of Pickles. But overall, I would say that this is a good set of changes due to the fact that, I mean, sure, it will make Geraldo stronger in some ways, like with the Blade Trap and the action figure price change, but there are some nerfs as well, and I'm eager to see how much Geraldo may change in regards to how people use him and how good he is in certain situations. But I would like to, at the same time, note that some things may be a little too strong, but again, I don't know. There's no drastic buffs that he got in this update. So overall, I'd say that I am happy about these changes. Okay, so Corvus is also getting a couple of changes. At level 1, his spear attack will now have a pierce of 4 instead of 3. Level 3, Soul Harvest has a cooldown of 40 seconds instead of 35. Level 5, Aggression's initial mana cost is now 50 instead of 80. So, interesting changes so far. Malevolence tick rate at level 7, 0.3 seconds instead of 0.5. So it is going to be a little bit faster. Damage for Malevolence increased from 3 to 5 at level 14, and Might decreased from 400 to 300 damage at level 20, and Overload from 4,000 to 3,000. So, I don't know that much about Corvus. I haven't really used him much, so I don't really know how to react to these changes, but Let's take a look at the notes a little further. As Corvus's power is still considerably top-heavy, the mid-game performance is being improved with buffs to underused spells, but also top-end power of his two most powerful level 20 spells is being reduced to lessen the pressure to need to get this far. So it sounds fair. It sounds like these are good changes overall. Let's go through a couple of final changes, not relating to specific towers or heroes, but still relating to balancing in this version of the game. Relics. Heartless now disables regrow bloons. Regrow rate increased from 150% to 10,050%, which virtually speaking means that there will not be any more regrowth when you use Heartless. And the Monkey Boost granted uses of the Monkey Boost power reduced from 3 to 2. So, minor tweaks, because Heartless feels it has no competitive edge over other relics, and Monkey Boost overperforms on all available tiles. So that's fair. Some relics required more functional changes, as more range is situational and sometimes detrimental. Going the distance has been merged with durable shots to also grant increased lifespan, and now instead increases the pierce of all towers. So going the distance now also provides plus 30% lifespan. Durable shots no longer grants increased lifespan, but does grant towers increased pierce of plus 25%. Deep Heat, on the other hand, let's take a look at that. Now grants Frozen Bloon popping power, so anything that's sharp will be changed to Shatter by that definition, and it also improves the duration of freezes by 10%, and freezes last to 1 extra layer on all affected bloons. So it is like more of a deep freeze in that regard. So it's interesting how things will play out with that, but overall I'd say these are good changes. Also, some boss bloons are getting changed as well. Elite Tier 4 Bloonarius. Bloon Bleed changed from 12 Moabs to 8 Moabs plus 2 BFBs. So I'm guessing that the Bleed Bloons thing is for like the bloons that pop out of the boss every like several hit points, 100 hit points, 1,000 hit points, or whatever, that you deal damage to it, but not at the skulls. The skulls spawn more bloons than this. And at tier 5 changed from 8 DDTs to 6 DDTs plus 2 fortified ZOMGs. So overall, it is a little bit of a buff for Bloonarius, which does make sense because Bloonarius has historically been a relatively weak boss in the game, so it does make sense why Ninja Kiwi is making it a little bit more challenging. Dread Bloon, normal tier 4, Rock Bloon hit points increased from 5,000 to 9,000, so a little bit over that of a fortified ZOMG's health, which is 8,000 for reference. And at tier 5, Rock Bloon hit points increased from 12,000 to 22,500, which is a little bit more than a bad bloon has by default, which does make sense because it's the normal Dread Bloon, not the elite Dread Bloon, because the Rock Bloons are relatively easy to deal with if you're playing against normal Dread Bloon, whereas they're pretty challenging and can be very annoying and costly if you're going up against elite Dread Bloons. So elite Dread Bloons, Rock Bloons definitely do not need a buff, but since it's the normal Dread Bloon that got a buff to its Rock Bloons, that does make a little bit more sense. Also, Phase. In Elite Mode, Phase's speed bonus while shielded is being reduced by 5% across the board as it felt just a little too quick. that sounds good as well, due to the fact that this boss is one of the more difficult ones in the game right now. So let's take a look. Elite Tier 1 shielded speed bonus nerfed from 50% to 45%. Elite Tier 2 from 55 to 50%, all the way up to Tier 5 going down from 70% to 65%. So let me know what you guys think of these changes, because I feel like this is definitely going to be a good update as far as balancing is concerned, because there are a lot more changes, I would say, that I like compared to those that I dislike or find questionable. And so I want to know what your thoughts are as well. Let me know your favorite changes, least favorite changes, towers and heroes that you may be using more or less than you used to, and all of that. And I look forward to seeing your comments on that in this video, or under this video in the comments section. So that's going to wrap it up for today's video, you guys. Thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. I presume you don't know this, but I will tell you now, and that's that I have taken a while to record this video, because I recorded most of it, the bulk of it, like before getting to the hero-related balance changes, one night, and then I recorded most of the hero changes earlier today, and then I recorded the rest tonight, like overnight, because it's almost 2 a.m. now where I am at when I'm recording this. But yeah, so just thought I would tell you that, because it was a little bit annoying to grind all of this out with all of the other things I have to do, especially in regards to preparing for graduate school. But once again, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you all for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more interesting content, and I will talk to you all again in the next video. Peace out.